All right, can you guys hear me? Alrighty, friends, I think we're ready to go. All right. Oh, I see Robin's jumping on. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I have been away because of all of the crazy weather we've been having, but I'm back and I'm ready to do one of the scrap challenge blocks. Please let me know if you can hear me. My audio meter seems to be working. Okay, so let's talk about what we've got going on today. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to share my desktop with you guys. So let me just show you what I've got here. If you go to www.jellyrollclub.com, you're going to notice there's a new bio. So there's an About Me section on my page. And then what I have is some updates that I've done to the scrap challenge. So I put a new video link, so that's today's video, and a new handout link. Also, I missed on Sunday my favorite things when I was away. So this one is going to be February 1st now, and Winter Friends, the two that are going to be rescheduled, are now February 1st as well. So I'm going to have a 4 o'clock live stream and a 6 o'clock live stream next Sunday. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that you need to do is find your handout link. It looks like this, and it's called Rosie Posy. And it's an old vintage block from way back in the day. It's made with all half square triangles. It's a 4x4. A couple of our blocks are not going to be all half square triangles, but these are the first set of the series. So there's a coloring page if you want to download it. If you don't want to download it, you don't have to. You can just take notes and then build your block. All right, so let me go ahead and switch over to my two cameras so you can see what I've got and move my keypad. All right. This particular block is pretty easy. For those of you guys who've been following, this is block number 4. You may want to go back and watch the first one. That one's kind of the most important one. And so you can see what I'm doing. So this one is made out of all half square triangles. So I went ahead and I made myself a little basket full of blocks. And what I've been doing is as I sew and finish up some of my UFOs, I've just been cutting these and putting them in this little box. All right, so let me show you what I've got. This block is easy, and for all of these blocks, because they are a 4x4, the easiest way to build them is in subunits of 4. Okay? All right, so here we go. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to put them in these 4 units. They're all identical, so if you rotate these 90 degrees like this, they're all the same. So they're literally all identical units, but they're just going in, you turn them one rotation each way you go. So I'm just going to go ahead and flip these over. I like to do them in pairs of 4 and leave them linked. So there's like a little string here that you see, and I'm going to show you why. And I'm also going to talk about how you press these little guys. Because these are made on a bias, they tend to be kind of squirrely. And so I'm just going to take these and put them together like this. Then I'm going to take these two and put them together like this. And then also these two and put them together like this. And anytime that I have like a particular order that I want to keep all my blocks in, I always just kind of pop a pin in the first one like this. And I stack them like this. And so I know that that's one unit. And then I'm going to pop a pin on this one and stack it on top. And what that tells me is that I'm sewing on this side and I have to keep them in that order just because I don't want to end up having to seam rip any of this stuff because these are smaller units and I don't like doing that. So I just take all of my blocks, and this is the unit that we're making. We're making 4 of these, and I'm going to take these over to the machine. And then I'm going to put them one on top of the other like this, and then I'm going to put this one last. All right. So let me go over to the sewing machine. You guys should be able to see that. And let me get these sewn for you really quick. First thing you do is you take out that pin. You have to make sure that you line them up. And if you notice, I have a fatter or wider foot on my sewing machine. And the reason I have that is because it tends to distort these little pieces less. And it grabs them up faster. Okay, so now that I know that this is one block and I want to keep them together, I'm just going to take one stitch And I'm going to put that right under the presser foot. Run that underneath like this. And then I'm going to stop and kind of pull that. And what that tells me is that these are part of a unit that's staying together. And look, it did it for me. My machine came unthreaded, and that's fine. So let me go ahead and just cut that. I have an automatic thread cutter. From time to time, it snags my thread, but it is what it is. You just need to make sure that you are rethreading that, and then it goes lickety-split. All right, lower that down. Whenever you're using thread, make sure that you're not storing too much thread, because what can happen is as your thread gets older and it sits there, it can start to get squirrely like this, and it kind of tangles up a little bit. All right, so that one is done. I have this particular set, and I'm going to leave my tail right there because that tells me that that's the top of the block. Now I'm going to get the next block, and I'm going to keep them somewhat in order just so that they will stay together. All right. Hopefully my thread will behave itself, but if it doesn't, I can always swap my spool of thread. Let me see what it's doing. Look at there, friends. This spool of thread is an older spool of thread, and what can happen over time is your thread, it can cause breakage. So let me just try that again. Pull both of these back, and if that doesn't work, then just switch out your thread. That's why thread is one of the things that I will not stockpile, is because it just gets funky over time, and then it breaks on you, especially cotton thread. It just does. When the weather changes, it can get brittle. In the summertime, it can cause problems. There you go. So now that one's ready, and it's the second block. And these are going to be done fast, fast, fast. Most of these blocks can be made, if you make a big stack of 2.5-inch squares, most of these blocks can be made in literally 10 or 15 minutes once you finish making a big pile. All right, so I'm pulling that out. That lets me know that that's the next block. And then I can separate these. I usually tend to start with my needle down, get those edges aligned. And I'm using a very tight stitch length for these because I don't want them to get stretched. So my stitch length for these is 2.0 instead of 2.5, just because I'm working with some very stretchy edges. All right, so now that I have all of this, I'm going to go ahead and add this little bit here, and I have all of my blocks ready to go. All right, so let me switch so you can see what I have going on. All right, so now you've noticed I've left these little dangles right there. And those little dangles are so that my blocks stay together. And I'm going to push this one towards this side. And I'm going to push this one towards the other side. And you know this is correct if I have a line that goes through and then one little fly. And then this one's going to go the other way. And the reason I do this is because this allows me to match these perfectly. If you're a new quilter, a lot of times what throws new quilters off is this little 1/4 inch right here. A lot of times new quilters will see that, this right here, and they'll think their blocks are off. But your blocks are actually not off. If you have a 1/4 inch here and a 1/4 inch here, then you've done the right thing. And then all you have to do is fold those down and nest them. And I like doing that with my blocks just because it keeps me from getting them all confused. I usually do pin that intersection just so that it stays together, and then I match the outside edges. So I always match the center and then move it to the outside, and then it just kind of falls into place and you end up with really exact blocks that way. These, same thing here. I know that these are a unit. And so I'm going to take this, do the same thing. If you notice, these are going to go right here. So one of the things that I want to do is see how this is going that way. I'm going to turn this the other way because what I want all of these pieces to do is to nest. And so now this one goes the opposite direction. And I will pin this together. Always matching the center first. That's why I leave that little thread hanging in there. And then once I match that center, then I know the rest of the block is going to fit nicely. And so I'll do it that way. I don't press this seam right here until I've laid out all my blocks, just to make sure that all of my seams are going to be less bulky. If you have a long armer, she will thank you, he or she will thank you if you don't have too many bulky seams. All right. So this one is going to be up here on top, like this, and so I know that that seam is going out, and so that means that this seam is going to go in just like this. And that's naturally the way my seam wants to go, so that's the bigger bonus. And so having that seam right there, match it up and then line it up. So match it up first, line it up second. You end up with really precise half square triangles if you do it this way. 40 years of quilting teaches you some things, and pinning is one thing I no longer skip. I used to skip when I was a young buck, and I was like, oh, I don't need to worry about pinning. It's fine. And then I realized what a mistake that was. Now I always pin. All right, so now that I have these, I'm going to go ahead and sew them up and bring them back, and then I'll be ready to put the entire block together. Hi everybody, if you haven't said hello to each other, please do so. My name is Ivonne, this is the Jelly Roll Club. We are on block number 4 of the 2026 Scrap Challenge. So you're just going to take all your little leftover scraps and we're going to build something cute out of them. All right. Always pull the pin just as you get there. Pull the pin and then take one stitch and readjust those to make sure that your edges are aligned. And I'm sewing with a scant 1/4 inch. For those of you who don't know what a scant 1/4 inch is, that is slightly narrower than a regular 1/4, so that when you press it open, it makes an exact 1/4. And that's why you see some patterns call for a scant 1/4 inch. That means when you iron it and you measure it, it's exactly 1/4. So it's taking into account that tiny bit of fabric that folds in your stitch line. All right. And here's the last one. Same as the others. You're going to stop. Don't sew over your pins. You will cry when you have to buy a new bobbin case or your machine is out of time. Those are the worst of times when that happens to your machine. All right, almost done. And we're ready to put this one together. All right, let me show you what I've got here. All right, does anybody have any questions so far about what we're doing? All right, all of my units should look like this. It looks kind of like a little bird, right? These are the wings and this is the tail. You should have 4 of these little units, these little bird-like units. And at this point, you can go ahead and press, right? And so one of the things that I tell people is when you get to this stage, now you can press because it'll make pressing the final block easier. All right, so Tina has a question. What's the method for making a single piece? To make a single piece, you're going to put 2 squares together that are 2.5 inches each. And then from there, you're going to draw a line from corner to corner and you're going to sew just 1 thread to the right of that. All right, so see how this one is all going crazy? I'm going to go ahead and finger press this against my wooden board, because whenever I'm working with these small pieces, I do use a wooden board. If you want to swirl that center seam, you can. It's not necessary, but you can swirl that center seam if you want to, and just kind of let it lay in two directions. So you can just kind of unpick that and let it lay in two directions, and that kind of helps with the bulk that some of these little seams have. But I'm just going to take a hot iron right now, and I'm going to press the seams that I know which direction they should go, and that just makes life easier. So on this hot board, I'm going to press them, and those lay nice and flat. Then I'm going to take these two, and I'm going to press them and lay them nice and flat. And I don't like to skip steps when I'm building these, just because this is really designed for people who are new to quilting or don't have access to quilt classes where they are. Sometimes people assume when they teach quilt classes that all of us had home economics or whatever, but not everyone out there had access to a good home economics class. I think maybe Gen X was the last generation that truly had home economics in school. Everybody else had to learn from friends, from family, from their aunties, cousins, whoever was a quilter in their family, maybe a friend or a neighbor. I had the good fortune of having home economics in school, and I had a neighbor's grandma who loved to quilt. All right, so now that I have these, and these are pretty flat, except for that middle seam, I'm going to go ahead and put them together. And that middle seam on this one is going to go to the right, so I'm going to have to go ahead and press it now. And then this middle seam doesn't matter yet. And then we're going to take this seam, and it goes down, and that's fine because this one goes up, so that one's going to nest nicely. But wait a minute, it goes this way. So that one will go to the right. And then this one fits like this, and it will go to the left. So once I get these vertical seams done, now I can put these together in 2 units like this. And I want to match these points and match these corners, and the same with this one. I'm going to match these points, and I'm going to match these corners. So I'm going to flip it over, and I want to make sure that these, see how these are nesting like this? That's what makes those points match. And so if you're new to quilting, that is the secret right there, is getting these little seams to match right up, is to nest them and to pin them. Same with this one, which is why I take the time to show you guys how to press these. And then you're going to just kind of lock them together, feel them with your finger to make sure they've nested, and then put a pin in there. And that is how you end up with really beautiful seams. All right, here we go. Let's go finish the last one. If you want to make it look like a bird, you can add a little head or a beak or maybe some embroidery. I think that would be a great block to make, especially if you had bigger pieces. As a matter of fact, there is a block called Birds in the Air that has a bunch of half square triangles going in one direction. All right, so let's go ahead and start that. Is anybody having problems with the bulky seams? When you have a lot of half square triangles, it can be a little bit aggravating if you're new to this process. Alright. Now that I have them all together, I'm going to trim it and I'm going to leave them connected in the middle because I'm going to come back. And if you notice, that little leader and ender keeps that fabric fed through the middle nice and smooth. All right. Let me see what we have here. All right, so now that I have this, And you see how it's connected in the middle? That keeps my pieces from getting flipped around. I can flip one going one direction and one going the other. I'm just going to give it a press. And if you noticed, a couple of these pieces stretched out just a hair in the middle. And to fix that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press it. But when I sew, I'm going to kind of cheat it just a little bit because this piece got stretched a little. So that means that when I line these up, I'm going to cheat that like that. I'm going to leave it to the outside just a hair. And I'm going to pin it because what that'll do is that'll compensate for that. And then when I press it, it should be fine. But I'm going to see how this goes one way and one go the other. When I get here, I want to match that up. So if you have a little sliver like I just did that kind of got stretched, you can kind of cheat it into place, and that will help keep it where it's supposed to go. And that way, when I sew from the other side, it'll be fine. All right, so now that I have this, and I'm looking to see if this looks okay, I'm trying to keep from stretching it. I'm going to sew it one seam, and then I will be done with this block. And this block is super easy. It's called Rosy Posy. All of these blocks have names, and most of these blocks are old vintage blocks from like the 1920s and 30s and even before that. This block that I'm making has multiple names. It can be seen. It's called Crown of Thorns in some old quilt pattern books from way back in the day. It's called Rosy Posy because sometimes it's made out of a single color in reds. It can be made in different sizes, so depending on the size of your half square triangle, you can make this one in different sizes, and it looks really pretty when it's in one solid color. All right. I'm using scraps for mine, but if you use this pattern, you could make it out of a single jelly roll and make it out of a single color, and it looks really pretty. All right, see what we have here. Ta-da! This block should measure 8.5 inches when I'm done pressing it. If you notice, I'm just going to push these in opposite directions, and that'll flatten that middle corner. I'm just going to tease it open like this. And what that does is it keeps that middle, if you swirl it like that, it keeps it from having way too much bulk. And I'm just squeezing it right there. And then I'm just going to press it. And if you want to starch this block, you can. But if you're going to starch it, make sure that you spritz it, you let it dry, and then you press it. Because if you press with wet fabric, it distorts it. It shrinks it too much, and then it can gum up your iron, and nobody wants a gummy iron. All right, so this is going to be laying flat now. And I like how this is looking. I'm probably not even going to have to trim it too much. I think it's going to be okay. I'm going to measure all of these blocks and make sure that they measure 8.5 inches. So I'm just going to lay that there. And that one is slightly smaller, which means I probably have some flex in my seams, and I do. That means I'm going to have to press this out just a little bit more. If your block doesn't measure exactly 8.5 inches, then just make sure that your seams are not off and that your pressing is not off. And so for this one, it looks like my seams are off just a tiny bit, like it wasn't a scant. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take and I'm going to pull ever so slightly, pin it, and press it down because it means my seams are not perfectly flat. So I'm just going to pull this out. Let me move my board so I don't distort it. And then I'm just going to use my woolly mat to get these. See how it has a little crease? To get these nice and flat without stretching it too much. And that should help it to be the correct size. A lot of times it's just a matter of pressing it. So there it goes. That looks like it should be enough. Make sure I don't have any weird creases. I'm just going to hit it with that hot dry iron, and I'm going to press it in fourths. So I'm going to pull this out, and I'm pushing it this way, flat, just to make sure I don't have any puckers in that. Oh, there we go. Now it's looking the correct size. And now I'm going to pull these out, and I'm going to make sure that those are nice and flat. And by doing that, it ensures that my block is flat and my seams are the correct size, and I don't have any weird distortions in my block. Okay, so now let's look at it. Is it 8.5 inches? And now it is. See what a difference pressing makes? It is 8.5 inches. And now I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to measure it this way, and it is 8.5 inches. So there you go, friends. Pressing makes all the difference in the world. If your blocks are off, make sure that you don't have any of these little tiny puckers, because a little tiny bit of excess fabric in that seam will prevent your block from being the correct size. So I love how this looks, and I love these colors. If you want to make this all in one color, you can, and it looks just as beautiful. So if you wanted to make this all in one color, you could literally just lay it all out, and you could see how pretty this looks. If you want to do like 4 colors in the corner, I thought about making them from light to dark. So if you wanted like 4 and then build a different color in the middle like this, and make it like darker as you went inside, and you had 2 color rings, like a dark blue and a light blue, I think that would be really pretty as well. So you decide how you want this block to look, but I think it would look beautiful in a lot of different color combinations. Look at that. If you were just doing it in like a dark blue, so like the inside of the ring was one color and then the outside was another color. So you do it however you want. Mine is going to be multicolor because my entire quilt is that way. But I hope you give it a thumbs up, and I hope you keep making these blocks. I think they're going to be super cute. So far we've made 4. And then when we're done, we're going to sash these. And so I'm going to give you a couple of sashing options. All right, everybody, thank you for joining me. The other blocks are behind me. If you notice, that is block number 1. Block number 2, block number 3, and this is block number 4. Alrighty, everybody, I hope that you're staying warm out there. We've got another winter weather advisory coming. I am going to be staying home this time, but I will see you guys on Sunday, and I will post the links for my next 2 live streams. All right, everybody, have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate you.